Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Vesuvius Committee of the Whole meeting, June 14th, 2022, 9 a.m. in Council Chambers. First of all, I would need the approval of the agenda. And I'm good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Vesuvius Committee of the Whole meeting. I don't have to say it again. No. Okay, there's no late items. Ms. Robinson, thank you. So could we have a motion? Councillor King, Councillor Rhodes, all in favor? Thank you. And the adoption of some minutes, that would be the Committee of the Whole minutes from May the 10th, 2022. We have a motion. Thank you. Councillor Rhodes, Councillor Bennett. Okay, and first off, we have today we have some petitions and delegations, and we have a presentation from the Petitions and District Museum with our CEO, Kara Burton. Are you the CEO? The executive director. Okay, CEO is close enough. Yeah. And the president, Martha Collins. So welcome to both of you. And did you have something on the screen, or were you going to come up and talk? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, just see it now.
To Mayor and Council, staff, and all of you watching at home, thank you for the opportunity to address you here today. My name is Martha Collins. I'm the president of the Vesuvius Museum Society, and along with my colleague, our CEO, Kara Burton, we're here to give you an update of the progress of the new museum and an overview of what lies ahead. Obviously, with the pandemic, there have been challenges, but over the last 2 years, the support of our community has been amazing. As you'll see, the museum has benefited by hundreds of thousands of volunteer hours, led by our project manager, Larry Stone. And under Larry's leadership, 90% of the subcontractors were local businesses, and phase 1 of the project, the main floor and the mezzanine, was completed in December of 2020. Phase 2 construction began in January of this year, consisting of the multi-purpose room, the archive, the artifact, the washrooms, and the progress has been steady. When you come to the museum, virtually everything that you see is brand new. Since receiving the keys on January 2nd, 2020, well over $1 million has been invested in the building. We cannot emphasize enough our gratitude that has been shown by the community. It truly is a community initiative. Over the last 2 years, various businesses and individuals have been very generous. And even during the global pandemic, we have received over $200,000 in donations in 2020 and 2021. While we could not do any active fundraising, our community has supported the project every step of the way. But finally, on March 25th, we were able to have an event, and that was when we scheduled our trivia night with the Rotary Club. It was a great event, and I hope that you will attend next year. Last year, we applied for a Pacific Hand grant of $310,000 to complete phase 2, as well as the Urban Heritage Park that will be located between Dolce Thai and the museum. We hope that we're successful in obtaining this grant. It's been a long process. They've come back to us numerous times for more information. So while we are hopeful, we are pressing on and starting to fundraise just in case we don't get that grant. At our last AGM in May, 2 of our longtime board members stepped down, Matt Hassan and Doug Alexander. Ginny Greb is our new treasurer, and Leslie Anderson became the new secretary. We've all received our tax notices, and you'll note that there is a line on our taxes, a parcel tax of $15.50 that goes towards the museum. I'd like to let you know that we're halfway through paying, and so that it's only another 10 tax notices that you'll see that mark. So thank you for putting this on that tax notice. The Vesuvius Museum will be in the parade celebrating on Canada Day, and we will be open on July 2nd from 11 until 3 o'clock. So do drop in. Thank you, Council, for all of your support over all these years. definitely we couldn't have had that building without your support. And when it is time, and when we have our grand opening, we hope that all of you plan to attend, so we can all raise a glass together and celebrate our new museum together. Thank you. And now, Kara Burton, our Executive Director / CEO, has a PowerPoint presentation for you.
Does that come with a raise?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
I always joke that when I took this job, you know, when it says on the application or on the job description and other tasks as required, I always say that I thought it meant vacuuming, not like fixing rooms and all that kind of fun stuff. Anyway, I'm Kara Burton, as you all know, I'm sure, Executive Director and Curator at the Association District Museum and Archives. Just a bit of basic information for those that don't know. The Association Museum was established in 1963 for the express purpose of collecting, protecting, preserving, and providing access to artifacts and information regarding the history of the Suisun area. Our society is governed by a volunteer board of directors, and we have 2 employees, myself and our collection manager, Celeste Pio. Our annual budget is approximately $100,000 a year, and that's funding is provided through a variety of sources, including, of course, the town of Vesuvius, Regional District of Okanagan, Okanee, as well as a combination of donations, grants, and fundraising. For a number of years, the society has been working towards renovating and moving into the building located just across the street here at 8702 Main Street. And on January 2nd, 2020, we took possession of the building and immediately began to renovate. So primarily what I'm going to show you today are photos of the process that we went through. So these are some shots of our beginning renovations. As Martha already mentioned, when you walk in, everything is new. We completely gutted the building right down to the concrete wall. So there's new plumbing, electrical, the mezzanines that were in there weren't up to code, so we had to get a new mezzanine for our office space. The stairwell wasn't up to code, so we cut in through the concrete floor to put in a new wider stairwell. We installed an elevator in the building so that it's completely accessible to the lower level. And we were fortunate through this to have an abundance of skilled workers to demolish numerous cleaning days as well as to do some of the building. The majority of our contractors for the renovation work are all local businesses, and all of them have given back to the project through discounts, in-kind, and financial donations. Moving the museum, there's no one that's written a book on how to move a museum, so it's been quite the task. Again, we were fortunate to work with local businesses. Volunteers have stepped up, and a whole lot of loads in my minivan. At this point, we have probably about 85% of our artifacts moved into the building. There are still some items in the old building that we're working on sorting through and organizing and getting moved up over the summer, and hope to have that complete by early fall, September. We've had a lot of community support, as Martha mentioned, over $200,000 in cash donations alone through 2020 and 2021. We have received a grant from the UCS Credit Union that partially funded the elevator, and we also have a significant financial pledge from the UCS Rotary Club to help fund the multi-purpose room downstairs. So these are some of our local donors. Of course, Francis Olajet has donated a number of trees and plants that will go into the outdoor area. We've had a lot of businesses step up, a lot of locals, and then of course we have started fundraising events with our first tree event. So moving forward, we have our building signage installed this week, which will be our new logo on the front of the building there. And the photos along the bottom, the 4 archival photos, will be murals on the outside of the building, similar to what the Suisun Home Harbor has that walk down the street. The lower level of the building is our main priority right now, and when complete, it will consist of our artifact storage and archive rooms, an artifact workroom, an exhibit workroom, additional washroom and storage, and the multi-purpose room, which will be fully accommodated for presentations and education, and also available to community groups for meetings. To complete the lower level and the other dates, we're sitting at approximately $300,000 more that we need to raise. And on a note, moving forward with the renovation nearing completion, we're starting to get back to the actual work of a museum. We recently hosted 8 UBC students for an experiential field study course. The students spent 2 weeks in the community completing research projects at the museum, as well as cultural awareness training over at Inconvenience, and they had to do individual interviews with members of the community as part of their research, so it's quite a mission project. And that we also have funding to do that course again next year, so we'll be offering it for a second year. We're also looking forward to bringing in traveling exhibits this starting this fall. And that's something we weren't able to do due to the state of the old building, too many environmental concerns down there. So the first exhibit that we will have will be called Waterways from the Cologne Museum, and it will coincide with the Okanagan Basin Waterboard Conference this fall. And we're also starting to start welcoming school groups back to the museum, which is a lot of fun. And we'll be extending our hours during July and August. Renovation work will be coming back on that. Currently, we're open only 2 days a week, and we're renovating 3 days a week. In the summer, we'll sort of flip flop it and be open more days and so the renovation of them. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much, Sarah. I was in there about a couple of weeks ago and saw the basement, and it's quite amazing what they've done. Can you explain what you had to do for the artifacts room? Because I was fascinated with that. You did some special ventilation and that.
We've got a dedicated environmental control system going in there, so it'll accommodate the artifact room and the archive room. Those 2 rooms, so that everything will be kept at a certain temperature, certain humidity and everything, so that it's all museum, quality. but it's to protect the other part of artifacts and archive documents.
Well, I was quite fascinated with it, so thank you.
We've done it, we've done as much as we can with the funds that we've had available. And it's sort of, there's always room for improvement. So we've done, what we can do, and then, when we're able to, then we'll take it up the next level. But it's a vast improvement over the old building. So it's nice to know that everything will be much more protected.
Good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Member. First, I want to thank you and all your volunteers for the work you've been doing over the last 2 years, and I think your dream's finally coming true. I think you're a major asset to the town. I believe in archives and history for people to relate back what happened in this town and how to move forward. On another note, though, with possibly the Royal Museum closing in Victoria, is there any thought of trying to bring some of their exhibits up here possibly next year?
They do have traveling exhibits that we've looked into. It's just a matter of the cost of them, because bringing them off the island adds, especially with the cost of fuel now. So we're looking right now at some of the local. Kelowna has quite a few exhibits that they will loan out. So we're looking at the exhibits that they have, simply to keep the costs down until we really get things done. But yeah, I know
It's in the back of your mind.
RBC does have some excellent traveling exhibits that we're hoping to bring in. If they, we've expressed interest in a few of them, and so they sort of, if they have a few other museums in the area, then they'll sort of do a loop and keep the expense down for everybody.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Did anyone else have a question? Can I know that, Sarah, that you and Celeste have spent a great deal of time loading your van with equipment
Boxes and boxes.
and bringing it back up. Have you got most of the major heavier items out of the?
Well, most of the heaviest items we do have out, because we did have to hire a crane lift that we had inside the museum to place them.
Okay,
So there are still a few large items, a few wagons down there. We can't move the rest of those large items until we get more of the lower level complete, because we don't have where to put them into the building. So we've got, like I said, probably 85% out of the other building. And that's small. Anything that could fit in my car, we brought up. 3D moved a lot of our larger items. We still got a couple of big cabinets down there that we need to get their help with. But yeah, we've got most of it out of there now. It's just sort of sorting through what's left down there to see what can be deaccessioned, which is a bit of a process for us to remove anything from the collection. So we have to go through that to see what we, if we've got multiples of things, and there are some things that we can get rid of. But in the meantime, we're just finding places for everything that we can.
well, I mean, you guys are all doing an amazing job. Thank you all for doing that. And, Martha and Carol, thank you for coming today and giving us an update because, I think we need it. So thank you so much.
Thank
and,
you.
Good luck with getting the rest of it done. We hope to get your
We went.
grants are key, aren't they? We apply for everything too. Okay,
Bye,
bye. Thank you.
you.
And next we have, is this Mr. Folio?
Wallow, yes.
Wallow.
That's okay, everybody gets it wrong.
Apologize.
There's nothing to apologize for.
Sparrow Scooters,
Yes,
Sparrow for Cities. So,
yes.
would you like to come up to the microphone,
Absolutely.
please? And welcome. And you're
Thank you.
going to, you sent us something. Is it also on the screen?
Yeah. On our computers.
Oh, I know it is,
I'm
but I
just
just wondered if she was gonna put it on the screen. Okay, you have it. Anyway, welcome
Thank
and please go ahead and tell us about your project.
Absolutely. So we at Sparrow Scooters, we're trying to bring electric kick scooters to, starting with the South Okanagan. We want to partner up with the smaller communities that the bigger companies don't want to be in because they don't find it fiscally responsible. Problems we've been having, such a small town like this, that doubles in the population in the summer, limited parking, limited roadways, limited everything. Electric skate scooters would definitely help ease a lot of that congestion, and take a lot of the cars off the road. The problem we have is not being a pilot city that isn't right now, they're technically illegal to ride on the roads. So even if anybody here were to have one personally, you're subject to a $598 fine if you're on any public roads. They're not allowed to be ridden on the sidewalks, just like a bicycle. And that's the limitations we have. So Sparrow Scooters is a small company. Our headquarters are right behind head office here. We've got somebody that lives there full time. I live in Oliver myself. We are a part of this community. We wanted to see things done right and see things done properly. Do you mind going to the next slide, please? Yeah. So something we do differently than a lot of the companies, like there's a lot of complaints with companies in the bigger cities like Kelowna where scooters are just lying around the streets and littered everywhere and they're not well taken care of. That's something that we do differently. We want to partner with the local hotels and the hospitality industry to have scooters on site at hotels. So customers don't need to drive to our location to rent a scooter. We want to limit cars on the road. So if we have them on site, everything's done through an app. They can rent the scooter right from their hotel, do what they need to do in town, whether they go to the beach, find another business to go spend some money at, get lunch, whatever it may be, and then ride back. Something that makes us different is we've got set parking locations. As you can see here, like up at Spirit Ridge, there's a little blue dot there. That is where vehicle can be parked, is within that blue dot. So what that means is if somebody tries to end a ride that's not in a designated parking location, they can't. The picture on the right there, you can't end your ride because you're outside the parking area, will come up. They will still be charged for their ride until they actually end the parking. We do have full geofencing capabilities, and what that means is like the yellow and the red. Yellow is a slow speed zone, 12 kilometers an hour. We have full capabilities of adjusting that within 5 minutes. I do that all myself. Red or no-go zones. Something we want to do is work with the town to make this as good as possible. Something that we offer that a lot of like bicycle rental companies don't is the fact that we do have these capabilities. Our scooters are limited to 24 kilometers an hour to begin with. If we do set a restricted speed zone, it's down to 12. A lot of the electric bikes are at the 32 kilometer an hour speed on them, and they don't have the capabilities to limit zones. Next one, please. So e-scooters have been in Kelowna and Burton for the last 2 years. Something that Kelowna did at the end of last year was they did a study to understand how well it did. And between those two cities, each city did roughly about 150,000 kilometers of scooter riding, which got 150,000 kilometers of car driving off the road. It lowered emissions by about 10 tons of CO2 per city per year. And the injury rate was about 0.02%. In Kelowna, they found that there was 51 injuries. Not necessarily, it didn't justify whether it was severe or minor. 51 injuries and 203,000 rides. Something that Burton noticed was 59% of all rides on scooters wouldn't have happened if, like, they wouldn't have driven to go out if scooters weren't available. So it got more people out, and 19% of all rides actually ended up spending money in the community that wouldn't have normally happened. Something that we plan on doing as well, something we've talked about some of the local businesses, is partnering with local businesses. For example, like we pilot water sports. I've spoken with Rob there, and he's interested in partnering and offering promotional discounts. So somebody rents with us, they can go get 10% off of a stand-up paddleboard. Keep it green, keep it economical, not necessarily a boat or a jet ski, but stand-up paddleboards just for the economic side of things. And same thing that we've offered them. If they do a stand-up paddleboard rental, we can offer them a discount on rides. Some of the other local businesses like JoJo's Cafe, Junction 97 Coffee House. We want to get more people into the smaller local businesses to spend more money and boost the economy a little bit. Why is Soyuz? Mainly because there's limited parking and the town doubles in size. I was down here the other day. I had to do 3 laps around the block just to try and park in front of Home Hardware. We all
need to walk.
I
walk.
I do, when you need something that's big and heavy, it's hard to carry, so I definitely do understand that. It's very, very difficult. Great thing about the Okanagan, especially the Soyuz, the operating season is March, April, the weather's fantastic here. So we've got 4 months where we technically won't be operating, but it all depends on weather. I mean, if the weather's nice and 15 degrees up until November, and it will go until the weather makes it unrivaled. During our off season, we make sure that all the scooters are working well. So like I said, some of the things that we do differently over top of some of the bigger companies, we're local here. We want to make sure that things are done properly. Our scooters are going to be maintained. We've got checklists, part to do with what the manufacturer recommends and part to do with above and beyond that. Every couple of days, we'll check, make sure everything's okay. We do battery swapping. Every 2 weeks, we do an extensive one where we ride it and make sure everything is up to par. A lot of the other companies, they just drop their scooters and every year they replace them and not worry about it because it's not fiscally responsible. They don't find it fiscally responsible to employ people with a living wage, for that matter, to actually maintain and keep on top of things. I know that the Soyuz has a climate action plan to keep the sky blue and to reduce emissions, and I feel like this would be definitely a good step in the right direction. Thank you. So e-scooters can be ridden on the road. When we're a pilot city, they can be ridden on the roadways just like any bicycle. So the reason they can't be ridden on the roadways right now is because they don't have pedals, and that is the Motor Vehicle Act and the legislation and the limits that we have. So just like skateboards or bicycles, they shouldn't be ridden on the sidewalk. And then something that Kelowna has done is they've done a lot of basically informing people. It's hard to limit the sidewalks with a red zone just because the GPS, so they are full GPS capable. With the GPS, it's done to about 3 meters or so. So we can limit best we can, but it's hard to say that no, they will not be on the sidewalk. They are limited to 24 kilometers an hour. That's a provincial regulation. We do have full access to that. And like I mentioned, with the slower speed zones, they're set to about 12 kilometers an hour. We are fully insured, so there's no liability on any other companies or anything else like that. We discussed it with lawyers. We make sure everything's all up to par and where it needs to be. I handle any complaints or concerns, whether that be with the public or with the city. I'm a regional general manager. I live in all of it myself. I've been out here for 5 years. Like I said, we want to work with the town and not just bring a business here and drop it and hope it does well. Everything is done through an app. So even when we have our scooters at hotels, it's just a benefit to the guests of the hotels. They don't need to worry about anything unless we take care of all of the battery swapping, all the maintenance and everything. They just have them for their guests. We will have some scooters on site right behind us here. We're commercially zoned in grades 8712 74th Avenue. They do require helmets, which we do provide. We are working on helmet locks on the scooters themselves, but as of right now, they will either, depending on where they're located, they'll either be on the scooters or at the reception of the hotels. You've got to be minimum 16 to rent and a maximum age of 7. With that being said, we've had 78-year-olds, yeah, or 68-year-olds, I should say, get on within 10 seconds they're riding and they will. Actually, that picture was taken last year up at Spirit Ridge. We did some demos last year at Spirit Ridge. So that's kind of what I.
No, thank you very much. It's very interesting. I think that we probably have some questions
Yep.
about this, and I know you say that they're insured.
Yes.
What about the rider? Does the rider or the person who books one of these?
Yeah.
Do they have to, number one, they don't need a driver's license, in order to have it, so it's like a bike, okay?
That's correct.
Should, if they are in an accident, I assume that the scooter's insured.
Yes.
What about, they would need their own insurance too?
Yeah, so how that works is the ride, just like a bicycle, the rider itself, if they were to get injured from their own doing, that's technically on them. If somebody were to hit them, it's just an insurance thing depending on how things go. Yeah, so our insurance mainly covers property and mainly property insurance. Yes.
Go ahead, Councilor
Yeah, thank you,
Kane.
Mayor. A couple of questions.
Yeah.
It notices you've got lined up 6 hotels, so about how many vehicles or these scooters would you put at each hotel?
So right now, Spirit Ridge has space for 20. Ideally, we'd be starting out about 10 per hotel. So we've got bike racks that we install at the hotels. We cover all the costs for everything. There's actually no cost to the hotels. And each bike rack will house the 10 scooters.
Okay, and you've identified 2 parking locations. Where's the second one? You mentioned Spirit Ridge. Where's the second one?
Second one, we're in talks with the Sage Hub.
Okay,
To have a parking location there. So everything was kind of in the process of getting going, and then the BC Highway Patrol kind of stopped and said, no, these are technically illegal. We were in talks with the Super 8 Motel as well as the Watermark. And we were just finalizing paperwork when we got stopped, so.
and then with the partnership with local businesses, that is kind of cross promotion, or are they looking to have scooters also?
No, cross promotion.
And last question is, what's the cost to rent one? No comment.
Works out to about $21 an hour. It's billed by the minute.
Oh, you go by the minute.
Yeah, so it's and something we're looking to do as well is to offer 2, 4, and 8-hour rentals for a cheaper rate, so they can have it for the day and not worry about things. And something that we're looking into as well is to offer almost like a leasing program. So if somebody would like to have one personally but can't afford the $1,500 to get a decent one, they can lease it from us on a monthly basis.
I guess the rider's responsible if it gets stolen while they're stopped to eat lunch.
No rider has no responsibility for that at all. So everything's GPS. It's just a part of the way this business works. So if something does get stolen, the GPS will be able to track it and get it back. Actually, one got stolen last year, and we got it back and recovered it. It's back in our fleet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
And just, I imagine that you have to get a permit from the town. When you got that permit, I would imagine that would include putting the name of the town of facilities as a additional insured.
I will look into that. Can you answer that?
I can, thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
But technically, no, we would not need to be added as additional insured. What would be the same as if somebody's saying has well, Mr. Roche, for example, with weight pilot, they need to demonstrate to us that they have the appropriate insurance to operate in our community.
What's the minimum insurance we recommend they have?
I'm not sure, Amy, do you recall for example, it would be significantly higher, I'm sure, for a weight pilot than it would be for.
It's fine, right?
5 million.
So the concern that I had is that we've got Highway 3 and Highway 97 going right, north, south, east, west. Does that obviously is why right now they can't be ridden on the roads, am I correct?
Yeah, so part of the Motor Vehicle Act, they're not covered or insured on the road, which is why we're not allowed on roads.
Okay.
Once we are a part of the pilot program, the wording changes a little bit in order to allow that to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know one of the things was suggested to us a couple of years ago was why don't we allow golf carts, you know, to be used around town? Well, guess what? You can't.
Yeah.
And for that reason.
Yes, because they're not insured like a motor vehicle.
Right. So, and is it possible to ride these, in the evening as well? Do they have lights on them?
Yeah.
Is that, okay?
Yeah,
They
so-
can be at any time?
No, so we can limit the times, and something that we've been looking, because we don't want people riding at midnight or
Right,
after they've been to the bar and drunk. So what we can do is we can limit the time they're riding from like 8 until 9.
Okay.
With that being said, if they started to ride at 8 o'clock, they're allowed to ride until they finish. However, they can't start a ride after the time is up. So it's that for safety reasons. So
Yeah.
if somebody's out, but at that point in time, I mean, if we ended at 8 o'clock and somebody is 7 o'clock and riding around doing their thing, you know, they're not stopping at a restaurant or a pub and becoming intoxicated. They do all have lights on them. They do automatically come on. We've got one on the front, one on the rear. They do automatically come on as soon as the scooter's turned on.
okay, sure, go ahead.
If these got rented at one location, can I drop it off at a different location?
Yes, you can. Yeah, so that is something that is allowed, and we do have a van, we will be kind of at the end of, or start of every day or at the end of every day, depending on how things go, is making sure that all the scooters are fully charged up and in that every location has enough for the day.
So right now, you tried it last year at Spirit Ridge.
Yeah, we
So
did some
that,
second
yeah.
Spirit Ridge last year,
and, or what other, you're talking about JoJo's? Is that just, is that a location or is that?
That's just a partnership.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
So
so,
just a parking.
yeah, so
Yeah.
locations would be more at hotels or areas where they've got
Okay,
more area for it.
sure.
So the Sage Pub, they've got a nice area and it's right across from the beach as well.
Yeah.
So for example, somebody can go rent it from Spirit Ridge, take it down to the beach at the Sage, park it there for the day, and go and enjoy their day at the beach.
Well, it sounds very interesting. I was a couple of years ago in Nashville.
Yeah.
And, that was a bit wild because I'm sure they weren't as organized as you, but there were scooters and, people riding them everywhere. And it was a concern for the drivers and the taxi drivers there. So
Yes.
that was my first reality of seeing a scooter. So I know that obviously you've done a much better job than they had there. And I know that it's like my concern is, what if they forget to take it back? They will continue to be charged on their credit card until it's returned properly. So that is an incentive, right? You
Yes.
don't want to just drop it off somewhere and forget about it.
Yes,
Yeah,
and my first experience was over here as well, right? It's fantastic there because again, just like here, limited parking and lots of things to see and lots of things to do. It's fantastic. You jump on one for 5 minutes. And like I said, we're doing things different than a lot of basically every other company by partnering with the local industry and not having the cars. Whether they're either not littered around the roads or we don't have a location where people need to drive to us to rent, because at that point in time was the point in renting one.
okay. Councilor Rose, did you have a question? Oh, sorry.
I wouldn't mind just making a couple quick comments for council, just so you understand some of the logistics of it. If council were to look favorably upon requesting the province to consider Seuss as a pilot project area, there's two intakes coming. The next one's in July, and after that it'll be September. Because it does have to go, you need a resolution of council, and then it goes for a provincial order in council of the province. And then, of course, we need to update our traffic bylaw. At which time, staff can make recommendations to council on, for example, where we would not permit these scooters. I think the truth of the matter is they're coming, whether they're legal or not. And they are being operated in other communities throughout the Okanagan and elsewhere in British Columbia that are not in the pilot program. For example, even in speaking with the director of development and planning services in Penticton, they do know that they have bicycle rental outfits that are now, for example, also offering scooters, although they are technically set up as a bike rental place. So, I mean, there is an opportunity, I think, for the town to get ahead of it, in a sense, and the city of Kelowna prepared a fantastic evaluation report on their program. They determined that 33% of the people riding scooters in Kelowna were doing so to replace their use of their own vehicles, which is interesting. That number is up to 49% from places like Santa Monica. So 49% of the riders are now using the scooter rather than their car to get around, which is significant. So I'm just not sure the council would like to have to bring back more information on, but just to let you know, we have done quite a bit of research on it already.
Do you mind if I say one
Go
more thing?
ahead.
Well, like, I know that, I was in town council with Oliver yesterday, and I know that the smaller cities are hurting for staff. And they're very short on staff, and any people that does need help with, we've got no problem assisting and doing what we need to do to help with that.
Okay, Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through to Gina. My big concern would be the insurance. If we say this is a pilot project, and we back as a town of Solis, somebody goes out there and rides and gets hurt, they're gonna sue the town and they're gonna sue them. And I think through MIBC, they can probably add it on, but I think we should check into it just to make
Yeah.
sure that if they can add us on as additional insured, that puts emphasis on them, takes it away from us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Councilor Bennett. Through the chair, I agree. I think that's a really good point. And as I said, I mean, that may in fact we may in fact be added on to the insurance for other organizations such as this. Sorry, I'm not sure if Ms. Wilson has.
So I'm attending MIABC tomorrow, so that is one of the questions that I was going to ask. We do require certain leases to add as an additional.
Go ahead.
Make the memory. How long's the battery charge on the scooter?
Up to 50 kilometers. So
50
it's,
kilometers, so
yeah.
it take me, how long can I go, 6 hours?
we've been trying to do testing, but the weather hasn't permitted us to do it. We did testing last year and they were able to be ridden 50 kilometers. But we are actually going to do some testing once the weather warms up to actually have it see how long we can ride on an hourly basis. Because that would also,
Yeah, how long you can. rent.
exactly, so there's no point in offering an 8-hour rental if they won't be able to go for 4. Yeah, so, but with that being said as well, most people won't jump on it and be riding for 8 hours solid. They'll go and stop in places, but that is definitely a question that we had come up and something we will be testing once it's up.
And we want to Mr. King as a test pilot.
Well, I was thinking I wanted to try it, see if I could get to Oliver and back on the trail.
That's something that we actually wanted to do was go on this trail to try and get from Oliver to Penticton and see how far we make it and just have it, if we got spare batteries, just put one on our back and that way it's, once it ends up dying, we can make our way back.
The trail's not quite finished there, but Oliver.
Not quite,
But we can get from Oliver to here.
and it's something that's, like I said, it's something that I have been intending on doing, it's just we're working with 3 cities right now in 3 towns to get this going, so I just haven't had a chance to do that. But it's definitely something we want to try.
We'll lend you a coat.
Sorry?
We'll get you a coat.
Thank you.
Mayor McCord,
Yes,
I
go ahead.
was just going to let folks know that it's not without requiring muscle control. So it does,
Yeah.
I don't think you want to ride it for 8 hours.
No, I don't think so either. And that's why I said it's more for that way people have for the day. They don't need to worry about somebody
Yeah,
else picking it up and taking it.
exactly.
They can rent it and go to the beach, go to a restaurant, go do what they want to do in the town. But no, I don't think it'd be like riding a bicycle for 8 hours. It's just not.
So I wouldn't be able to jump on it and go and get my shopping, my grocery shopping.
Oh, you could.
Well, I don't carry it.
I'm in Oliver, I take a backpack, I went to get a haircut, I go grocery shopping, I do whatever I can on it, especially with the price of gas being
Yeah.
over $2 a liter. It's very easy to jump on it and go with it. Actually, so I was, before everything got shut down, we were in a building over beside Century 21, and going out for dinner at the Sage Pub with a couple of friends. I rode a scooter because I wanted to talk to Alan there. We left, so the friends I was with, they drove, I rode a scooter, I got there faster than they did. Because they had to turn around and try and find parking, they were trying to find parking, I passed them and pulled right up. So they definitely, I do think they have their place, not everybody wants to get on a bicycle as well, I think. One of the studies done in Kelowna was, people that hadn't that have bicycles but haven't even been on them in over a year, we're jumping on scooters.
Well, it's very interesting, and certainly there seems to be a lot more that needs to be, arranged before we can
Yes.
say yes, and we'll certainly look into all of the questions that have been asked today, but thank you very much for coming and presenting this. You're obviously very gung ho about this and super keen on getting it organized, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Have a good day.
thank you. Just wait for Chris. Chris is in the washroom. Good morning, Chris. You're on. You want to come up to the.
Okay, yeah, sure.
up to-
I've got a presentation on the PowerPoint.
Oh, good.
Sorry,
Can you give
USB
it to
drive.
me? I think you ride your bike to work, don't you? No, you don't. Okay. This is Chris Garris, who looks after all of the things that Gina looks after here, planning and development at the RDOS. And I've known him for quite a while. His parents are really good friends of mine. They live in Montreal. We've done some traveling together. So welcome, Chris. You're going to talk about the rural growth area, the rural growth strategy. So as soon as we get that.
Which one? No.
So, sorry, I can't see the screen, but there should be an RGS folder
Okay, got it.
on the
Yeah.
drive, and then there should be a presentation hopefully. Folder.
Are you attending on Thursday to the law seminar?
Hopefully it's board day. So,
I know it's a tough day for you,
Yeah. So,
which is also another opportunity to talk about things like e-scooters and the latest release from the ALC, which I'm sure you saw.
yeah, subdivision and rules and.
Yeah, it's always busy. I'm there in person on Thursday.
Okay.
RDOS, yeah.
Okay, so I understand I have 10 minutes.
Sure, go ahead. We'll ask questions too.
Yeah, I've got a few slides, but I'll try to go quick. So I'll just say next slide when I'm ready to go. So does that work? Or-
Just one.
I'll,
Just gonna share the screen.
sure. So jump into the second slide. where you're getting talking about, But, again, I don't know how much, council's aware of the regional growth strategy, because it is technically a regional district bylaw, but it's one that the municipalities in South Okanagan are party to. So everything within the RGS has basically been agreed to by, obviously, the electoral areas, AC, and I, along with Indigenous Summerland Facilities. And all of it within the RGS, it was adopted in 2010. And there's a number of sections to it, which I'll get to in a moment, but just again, for council benefit, the purpose of the RGS is to promote green settlement, socially, economically, environmentally sensitive. And also importantly, from our perspective is to ensure efficient use of public facilities and services, so much structures such as water, sewer, and that's like. So there are a range of different sections within the RGS, but I have to be honest, at least the regional district one that we use the most is the very first one, which is housing and development. Next slide, please. And so it's the housing and development that established the rural and primary growth areas within the South Okanagan. And the RGS is essentially trying to focus growth on those particular areas, right? And so we're trying to get away from rural sprawl and unordered development outside of municipalities. Next slide, please. So you can see here, basically, I tried to put them in terms of hierarchy. So the red stars indicate the primary growth areas, and the probably shouldn't be any surprises here. Those are generally municipalities, so obviously some like all over so use. And that's because they do have the infrastructure, amenities, the health services, the employment, everything to support increased growth. And I can recall years ago when the RGS was nearing adoption, sort of a lot of discussions about how we would then deal with growth outside of those primary growth areas. And there's some back and forth on that. At the end of the day, what the RGS settled on was what we call rural growth areas. And there's some criteria established around those. Generally existing zoning allowed for such 200 units. And so the communities that were deemed to qualify for considerations of rural growth areas, you can see in the list here, were in Cleveland, et cetera. Within electoral area A, which is the rural area around the town of Soyuz, we had two designated, which is Willow Beach and Anarchist Mountain. Willow Beach at the time was the 1,000-unit proposal, so that's what brought it to the board. And of course, Anarchist was at the point when Willow Ridge was in full blown development, and they had zoning for 600 units up on the hill. Next slide, please. So with the RGS in place, I'm just shifting gears here a bit now. So the obligation then becomes on all the participants to the growth strategy to then ensure that their community plans are consistent with it. And so I've got some examples here, and obviously I'm starting with the soil. So there's basically two things, I guess, at a very high level that we had to do, which was to, through your regional context statement, explain how your OCP is consistent with the RGS. And then the second part, which again gets back to that very first goal, which is the human and housing development section, establish a growth boundary through your OCP, which is where within these boundaries you're going to be focusing your efforts on development. Next slide, please. And similarly, we had to do something along those same lines in the rural areas. And so we took the approach that every time we review an efficient community plan for one of our electoral areas, there's no obligation on EAs to do context statements. But we do have to establish the growth boundaries for those communities that were shown as rural growth areas. So you can see the progression here. I won't name them all off, but in 2018 we did Area F, which is the West Bench, Boulder, Greater Ranch area. And you can see we had to establish growth boundaries for Greater Ranch. There's an asterisk there because there was a concern that maybe Greater Ranch was no longer a suitable growth area. It should be looked at next time the RGS was reviewed. And that happened again when we looked at Area A. There was concerns that Willow Beach and Anarchist were no longer suitable rural growth areas and might need to be removed from the growth strategy. So there's policy statements in the OCP supporting the review. Of course, you can't say take it off, but they have to be consistent with the RGS, and the RGS says these are at this point in time still growth areas. So next slide, please. And again, just some context, or I don't have a lot of stuff here, but I'm not sure if council is aware of the growth areas that established for the two areas in Area A, but you can see here for Anarchists, we took a very narrow approach. We felt that a lot of the 1 hectare parcel probably weren't suitable for future growth going forward. So the area that was selected here was the commercial core that they had envisioned for future density at some future point if they were infrastructure up there. And with Willow Beach, it was more or less, even though Willow Beach extended further north into the wetlands there, the growth area was extended or was drawn around the existing mobile home park where they had originally proposed their density. Next slide, please. So, yeah, so getting back into my flow here. So with these OCPs in the rural area telling us to review some of the growth area designations, under the Local Government Act, we have to review the RGS every 5 years. That's statutory requirement. So we knew there was a review coming up in 2020. We knew we had at least one OCP at that point in time telling us that we think we had an issue with one of the growth areas. We put to the board that we should undertake a review in 2020 and we should look at Greater Ranch and then subsequently look at Willow Beach and Anarchist. So that was the original direction to the board. Next slide, please. But other issues have come up as well that kind of fed into this review. We've struggled at times with how do we deal with growth that occurs outside of the designated growth areas. If you're not in a growth area, it's a very black and white document. It's either you're in or you're out, and if you're out, what does that mean for us at the staff level? Is basically that there really isn't any scope for additional growth to be occurring. Of course, we do have proposals that come forward from time to time where they are proposing growth, and staff will do an assessment and put it up to the board. And there's been some not disagreement, but the board has taken a different position on the RGS, which is fine, and determined that some of these growth proposals outside of designated areas were consistent with the strategy. Interestingly, we did have one example recently where the board took the opposite approach and felt that the growth proposal within a designated growth area wasn't consistent with the RGS. So there's an issue there we need to tackle to ensure that the strategy better reflects, I say here at the board's position, but obviously because you're participating in the municipality, your position with the RGS as well. So it's kind of changed the scope of the review a little bit. It's not just simply looking at Greta, Willow Beach, and Anarchist. And you can go to the next slide. We're taking a more expansive view on the review process. So We've been working on this on and off since 2020. And we finally were able to put forward a proposal, actually very recently, between the second board meeting. And there were two options there. The simple option one would have just been to proceed as originally proposed and strike those 3 rural growth areas off the map. The alternate option, which is the one that the board ultimately went with, some slides explaining that, proposes to replace the growth area map with a new map and to introduce new housing and development objectives and policies in support of that. The second 2 dot points here were part of the original proposal, and there's no change to these. We do need to pursue amendments in relation to energy emissions just to reflect new provincial legislation. And we're also trying to incorporate some of the elements of the 2021 housing needs assessment that I believe the town partnered with us on. Or did
Yes,
you
but we'd
pursue-
already completed our own
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, next slide, please. So, and I appreciate this is, ideally I would have had an amendment bylaw to council for their consideration for the presentation, so this is probably new for most of you who aren't on the board, but I'm hopeful to have an amendment bylaw to the town soon for more considered review, but I'll give you a quick overview now. So the image at left is the current map that shows the rural growth areas. The one at right is the one that we want to move to in the hopes that it will provide a little bit better guidance as to how to deal with growth outside of the other municipalities and okay balls. Slide, please. So we've got new categories. As I was saying earlier, the current RGS only has basically, well, I guess 3 in total. It's either your primary growth area, a rural growth area, or everything else. So we want to move to, I think, 7 or 8 different classifications instead of those 2. We're proposing to basically maintain growth areas as they are. So soil usage status wouldn't change under the proposed provisions. It would still be considered a primary growth area, even though we're dropping the primary reference from the title. Our hope is in the next 10 years, as a result of this review, that when we get 2031 census data, we can look at it and hopefully we directed 95% population growth to the member municipalities, which are designated as growth areas. And again, it's for all the same reasons that I outlined in some of the previous slides, because you basically have all the existing infrastructure and amenities necessary to support that kind of growth. Next slide, please. So now we're kind of transitioning here into how we're proposing to deal with the rural growth areas and changing their status. So at the moment, Apex is considered a rural growth area. I appreciate that the town of Solis is also basically a resort area, but because in the RGS context, you're an urban growth area. We're not proposing to include you within this resort area designation, which would only apply to Apex at this point, and basically because it has provincial status. But again, Apex is a community that has water and sewer. It's got a mix of uses, including in the context of the regional district, high density development. I think there's some housing up there that's in excess of 150 or 100 units per hectare, which for us is a lot. So this is one of the new categories. Next slide, please. Village settlement areas. So this would apply to Merrimack, Cleveland, and Gallagher Lake, which are all currently rural growth areas. Village settlements, it's a step down, but it still contemplates potential provision of both water and sewer to these communities. So by way of example, Merrimack already has community water, and they are in the process of exploring the provision of community sewer. And we need to draw a growth boundary around that community. And so this is what we're proposing with the new RGS, and that this would be where we focus provision of infrastructure, higher density developments, if there's commercial proposed that occur within the Merrimack Village town site area, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please. Taking another step down. So now we're getting into what we call our rural residential areas. So again, another example, Willow Beach is currently a rural growth area. We know that suitability may not be appropriate for that designation. So we're saying maybe the rural residential classification we've come up with is more suitable. Again, these communities may be serviced by water and sewer, but we don't see that being expanded in the future. Again, in the context of the regional district, we say small parcel sizes. So for us, that's less than hectare in area. Willow Beach is obviously got parcels much smaller than that, but there's other communities such as West Bench or Alder and maybe Heritage Hills might fall under this category. So there's a range of parcel sizes in there. Again, mostly what you're going to find in these locations is residential development. Probably not going to see small scale commercial components. So you can see next slide, please. Again, so now rural classification, so Riva Ridge, currently a rural rural growth area, that would basically be removed entirely. The rural classification sees basically no servicing provided to these communities. We're not going to spend infrastructure dollars on providing community water, community sewer to Riva Ridge. It's all 1 hectare parcels up there. Again, primarily residential, but I suppose there may be some hobby farming or home industry uses, or something else you define in the rural area occurring. So that's a big change for Riva Ridge from its current status. Next slide. We also have agricultural areas of designation and to be applied to lands designated as ALR. So I've shown here how that would relate to the lands around the town of Soyuz. And so primarily the objective of this classification would be to preserve these lands for continued agricultural use. We do have policy statements related to this, and again, I know it's the reality out there is quite different to say how our colored lines on that here look. In relation to servicing, I believe the town provides water out into the rural area. The RGS contemplates that and supports that on the proviso that is generally for agricultural use of lands in the ALR. The services aren't being extended to facilitate residential development of these lands, which I suspect the agricultural land commission would support anyway. Next slide, please. Winding down here, I think this might, oh no, I don't want to this. So we're kind of now into the everything else category. So this is primarily crown land. Crown land can comprise community watersheds, provincial parks, protected areas, environmentally sensitive, forestry, mining operations, etc. Through the RGS policy statements that we're proposing are that this land remain basically as is. We don't want to see it carved up. We don't want to see services extended to it. At least not outside of another review of this RGS. Next slide, please. So this last one is an interesting one. I don't think the current RGS says too much about the observatory up at White Lake. But there are concerns around its, well, I guess there's always been long-term concerns around its continued viability, especially in relation to proposed redevelopment proposals in the area. And so with the RGS, we're trying to provide some assurance to the observatory that its long-term operations won't be affected by redevelopment residential proposals. And so through the RGS, we're basically saying through the purple layer here, if there's any proposed land use changes within that area, that this is deemed to be a regionally significant change. And that it's not simply a rural vote on a land use matter, which only requires 5 directors support, that this is actually an RGS consideration, which we're bringing to play the 14 members to the RGS, and we have the support of 7 or 8 of those members in order to make that change. So just focusing on the regional significance of the observatory with some policy statements there. Next slide, probably the last one. Yeah, so next steps. Under the Act, we're required to get a consultation plan adopted by the board, which we'll get this Thursday. I'm out traveling, try to visit all the councils and just do this kind of refresher before we send you the formal bylaw for your review and feedback. So we'll be asking all the councils for input on the draft. We're going to be initiating public engagement, primarily in forms of public information meetings, probably. And I'll be talking to Gina and the other directors of planning in the valley, just how we might be able to coordinate joint meetings within your community so that we can get area and town of Soyuz residents to participate in this project. We'll collect everything up, see what kind of comments and feedback we received, and tweaks need to be made to the amendment bylaw and take it back to the board for direction. And again, because you are a participant to the bylaw, no change can be, because this is a major amendment under the Act, no change can occur unless we have the town's consent, right? We would also require contingent consent, however, in some of them consent as well. So there could be a few more steps in this process. I guess we'll see how the changes land and how council perceive them. But this is kind of where we're at the moment. So you may or may not see me again later this year when I come back for your approval of the final version of the project. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Chris. I just want to point out that the 14 members that are just the ones in the Okanagan. So is the Milkameen, Jeremias, are not involved in this regional growth. They were given the option and decided not to. Is that correct? Way back?
Yeah, my understanding was that they felt they weren't subject to the same development pressures.
Okay.
That were occurring in Okanagan, and that they didn't feel an RGS would benefit them in that way.
Yeah. But anyway, it's, I mean, I try and listen to it every time Chris speaks at the regional district, and sometimes it still feels like Greek to me, so. I do appreciate you coming with the slides. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess as this process move forward, and I'm sure it'll get passed, would that mean there'd be better opportunity for the developers of Willow Beach to actually develop?
Well, I mean, at the moment, Willow Beach is a rural growth area, and so, I mean, we struggled with that designation because, if I'm not mistaken, the town is only able to provide 80 connections
Correct.
to Willow Beach. So what kind of a growth area is Willow Beach really when it can only have 80 units? To me, it
That's
seems
right.
like it's not really an effective growth area, which is one of the reasons it was flagged for review.
You're talking about water or sewer or both?
Both.
Yeah, because there is sewer out there, but there's very limited water, right? Because it doesn't go to the head of the lake. Yeah.
Sewer doesn't go across the street.
Sorry, so through the chair, no, I appreciate that, and thank you, Mr. Garris. So the situation there is that we can't guarantee that there's enough water to supply services for fire services, for example. And Chris is correct, we did discuss this at length at our recent meeting with about the RGS and how to sort of handle the Willow Beach. We're currently in the process of preparing comments to send back to the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure as the approving authority for subdivisions in the regional district with respect to that particular development. So we'll be providing comments back to them. I'm not sure what the comments of the regional district are on that particular proposal at this time.
Well, I mean, we have our servicing requirements, but I mean, generally from a strategic land use perspective, the cap at 80, yet it's a growth area, and to us, when you're a growth area, it suggests we want to see more and more development there occur over the decades, right? So how can that happen if they can't get more than these connections, right? And so, so there's nothing stopping Willow Beach from developing now. The board recently approved its zoning application, I think, earlier this year.
Yes.
That gives them, it was actually technically a down zone because I think under their tourist, commercial and medium density zoning that existed previously, they could go up to 240 units. There's no low density zone, which is what they asked for. Gives them the
That's correct.
So again, we effectively down zone the growth area, which again calls its suitability into question. So,
Sure, that's the rationale to take it out.
well, if it's capped at that number, it's not, they can't really be a growth area long term, so we might as well move that classification. Hence, I think under the slides that were shown as rural residential, yeah, you know, limited servicing, not really too much further growth potential. And we'll just leave it at that. Okay.
So the concern is that it's a big floodplain out there too, and certainly when there is an increase in lake levels, which is still
Right
possible considering the rain,
Yeah.
it does make it pretty difficult. So yeah, I think it's a bit scary out there, and I'm certainly happy with seeing it lower down. Certainly the Okanagan Basin Water Board and the water people are quite concerned about the development out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, without getting into detail too much on a specific proposal, I mean, we do have the floodplain regulations in the bylaw for the lake, and so the question is always, are we going to build the site in order to try to achieve compliance? Or we do it on a house by house basis. If they're developed and simply have the habitable space, maybe build some second floor above the garage down below so that they're complying that way. And it remains to be seen how the developer can address that.
Sure. Anybody else have any questions or any concerns? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Garris, for coming in and speaking to us. Thank heavens Chris is there at the regional district because he seems to know everything. So we really appreciate it, and we certainly will be sending questions or asking you to come back if we have some concerns later. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. I believe that's everything that we have on the agenda today, so could we have a motion to terminate? Thank you. Counselor King, seconder, Counselor Bennett. Thanks very much, everybody.